New intro time. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, children and babies, welcome to the Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. My name is Deven Morgan. I'm the director of youth baseball at Driveline. I'm the founder of the Driveline Academy. And I am joined by Driveline Academy coordinator, my brother, my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy International Man of Mystery, Jeremy Tactile.
Hello.
I missed you last week.
Yeah. It's tough to record all on your own. So I know you've done like some deep dives on our demographics.
Yes.
A lot of dogs, cats, and babies listening.
A lot of Manny Fresh fans.
Okay.
That's who actually came up with that. Manny Fresh, legendary producer of the Hot Boys, Cash Money Millionaires, Lil Wayne, BG, Turk. Yeah.
All right.
That's my demo. My demo. Joined special guest this episode with Driveline Academy high performance coordinator Connor Stratton.
There's actually a question mark on his job title too. Like when you look at it, there's a question mark.
Shout outs as per usual. Axbat.com code DL20 will get yourself 20% off. If I had my druthers, an overwhelming majority of kids from ages like 6 to 9 would be swinging axe bats like from jump. It fixes the most significant problem that kids deal with, or at least what I've seen, which is like bad hand setup leads to bad swing plane, bad contact. You don't want to deal with that. The axe bat effectively functions like a constraint implement to kind of solve that, because you're naturally just kind of put your hands in a position where that natural, what we want, the ideal, the optimal, the palm up, palm down at contact is just kind of naturally there because we set it up from the jump. Not to say that you can't swing a round bat success or a round knob successfully, because obviously millions of players do. But when you're talking about young kids, man, I think that is just a huge unlock, because when you see these kids who have like really jacked up swing planes and you look at their hands and it's like they are trying to, choke a snake to death. It's not entirely surprising like how we end up with this downstream problem because of an upstream poor configuration. Axbat.com code DL20. Diana Leviticus 20 DL20 20% off. Shout outs to folks that have reached out to me about road showing the book. Deven at drivelinebaseball.com. The new
Deven.
2 E's. My favorite thing is when someone will reply to me off of something that I've sent to them, and I obviously typically spell my name correctly, and then it's like I get like DEVIN in the back way, and it's like, I mean, I get it. I'm sure I've done the same thing. I'm sure we're all guilty. It's not intentional or malicious.
It's like worse when I get it, because like yours is not a normal spelling.
Sure, correct. No, it is not.
There's a bunch of ways to spell Jeremy, but there's one way that the vast majority of Jeremy spell it, which is the way I do, and like to all those people who add a third E to my name.
Bold.
Hey, I mean, you can spell my name with a K. I've gotten that.
Yeah, you're
weird. I've gotten 6 different ways to spell my name.
Yeah, and we've got most of them in the academy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just it's a weird, that's one of those names where there's so many different ways you can spell it. That one N, 2 N's, an O, an E, a K, a C. Like there's it's way too many.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Way too many. Although
the K is
Connor with
bold.
a K is tough. Yeah, that's I wouldn't do that.
K with one N too is like, who is your parents?
Yeah, it's
Yeah. The Connor the Bold is like a Viking.
Yeah.
Anyways, we have a new youth training book coming out. The Skills Scale Training Manual. I don't know. It's going to be the Skills Scale something, because I think that's the strongest branding that we have about like what we're trying to do and why. I've got some coaching conferences booked already that I'm going to be speaking at. And if you or someone that runs a college coaching clinic, youth baseball clinic, anything in that regard, Deven at drivelinebaseball.com. Email me. Let's talk. We'll figure it out. Should we shout out to the Mariners for being eliminated from the playoffs?
if you want.
Good friend of mine, Jermaine Miller, a.k.a. Maniac B, a.k.a. The Deaf Chef, a.k.a. I feel like he's got, Maniac Tubman. Jake One, famous Seattle hip-hop producer, put out an album called White Man Music years and years ago. Again, I know my demo. One of the songs on there's a song called Home, and it's got like all of like these legends that I grew up with, and Maine has a phenomenal line on that song, which is I watch Seattle sports, I watch Seattle news, I hope Seattle wins, I watch Seattle lose. So shout out to the Mariners. When I was watching them lose that game and get eliminated from the playoffs, I was thinking a lot about our the Colton Wong episode. Mm-hmm. It's talking about like Colton Wong single-handedly like shifting the balance of the playoff race in the American League, which is just a beautiful thing. Shout out to
luckily, I, along with many of the Driveline staff members, this weekend were at a wedding where
Yes.
there was no TV and no real cell reception. So most of us didn't know, which is a positive.
Yeah, sure.
It's a positive. And most of us had no idea until Sunday that what happened Saturday night.
Yeah. So shout out to the Mariners. Shout out to Driveline GSD coordinator Emily Coolbaugh on her successful new
Emily
fuels.
David.
That's right. For her wedding this weekend. Shout out to the Academy Hundo Club, kids that hit a ball 100 miles an hour. We have a new entry.
Yep.
Ryan Eaton, Will Weber graduated but playing college baseball now, and Max Miles. I think that list is going to get up to like 7 by the end of this year.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah. So
We got guys who are really close.
Yeah. So shout out to those kids, man. They be working hard.
Ryan's also the youngest one to do it.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
By a long shot.
Yeah, Ryan
turned
is a
15.
16U. Just hit a ball.
Just turned 15.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's going to be exciting to watch that kid develop over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So when you were not here on Friday, I showed Stratton this hilarious thing that I saw, this social media ad. You ever heard of True Height?
No, I haven't.
Were you aware that you can get taller by eating gummies?
That is patently false. I've eaten gummies my entire life, and I have not gotten any taller than 5'9".
Well, let me tell you, you could have been growing taller and reaching further by taking these gummies. And it's so hilarious because, like...
this isn't like you could just eat Haribo gummy bears and be taller. Like, these are specific...
Unfortunately, it is like
think it'd be
the peach rings. You know, like that's not going to get you.
Okay, well, then I take it back. Then
yeah.
maybe this works. I don't know.
And I thought this would be a funny way to kind of walk into the reason that we have Connor on the show today, which is to talk about what we do in high performance, because we talk about parents a lot on this show. I am, you know, I'm not only a member, but I'm also a client. Is that what the Men's Warehouse guy used to say? I get it. Like, I want to be really clear. I get it. I understand that parents want to go to the end of the earth to try to like help their kids get what they want. And as a person who like never really like broke 6 foot, right? My dad is 6'2". I didn't get as tall as my dad. My wife is not tall either. We make sturdy people with hips and shoulders. We don't make, tall people. Like, that's just, hey man, like that's how it's gone so far. Her brother was again like 6'2", 6'3", but whatever.
And make sturdy people. It's phenomenal.
They make
So like,
clothes.
I get it. Like you see something, you're just scrolling on Facebook. It's the end of the night. You've had your dinner. You're like, you've got some show on in the background. You're not really paying attention to, and you scroll, and you're like, oh I can help my kid get taller. And I just have to buy these gummies. Like let me just fire up the, let me fire up the machine. And the funny thing is that like the mechanism by which they advertise these gummies to work is stuff that we understand is just like holistically beneficial for everyone. Nutrition and sleep and like appropriate, vitamin supplementation if that's a thing you need, right? Like in the Northwest, we don't get a ton of sun. Supplementing with a little bit of vitamin D or going out of your way to find a natural source of vitamin D, probably not the worst idea.
Yeah.
But it's funny to me that like the easiest way that people think about solving that problem is with their checkbook, with the credit card. The other thing that Connor specializes in is work, programs, systems that are literally going to get you better in a much more actionable way. And I'm not saying that, like, I'm not trying to slander this company. We're trying to find sponsors. So True Height, maybe there's a working relationship for us to,
I'll test out your gummies. I would love to get taller than 5'9". I am willing to be if you're looking for like someone over 30 to test your product on, I'm in.
Sure, because I don't think they're looking for like 46-year-olds.
They might. You never know. They want like a whole range maybe of data.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you've seen my vitamins. I take a lot of stuff.
You take a lot of stuff.
And I'm still like,
you take
5'10" and a half.
Yeah. But you don't take that.
Yeah. Maybe that's an unlock.
Maybe. I mean,
I like gum. I'm willing to eat
More gummies.
More gummies. If that's what's going to get me taller than 5'9".
Yeah.
Can they make them look like Scooby-Doo characters? Because if so, I will eat them all day.
That's it, though. Well, what about like?
But they don't look like Scooby-Doo. It's
What about like
no-go.
Flintstones? I know those are not gummies, but no, you're out of the Flintstones.
Nah.
Okay. All right. What about Scrappy?
If I can't eat them while listening to Blink-182, it's not it for me.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Sorry, not
Fair
182. It's Sum 41 that does that song, isn't it? The intro to What's New Scooby-Doo. You know what I'm talking about?
Well,
I think that's Sum 41.
It's some point. That sounds
Pretty
like
sure. It's not Blink-182. That's my other punkness coming out.
the answer is, well, that's actually an episode of the Scooby-Doo show.
Yes.
where a guy takes gummies to get taller.
Maybe. Yeah. Anyways,
Completely derailing this thing.
Yeah, it's
Right.
fine.
the tricky thing is that committing to a 6-week power phase means you're literally talking about like you're going to see the result of that in some way, shape, or form in a month and a half.
Mhm.
Yep.
In the interim, you are going to have to work your tail off to know that the payoff for that is going to be 6 weeks from now.
Yep.
And it's a lot easier to just go like, well, I'm just going to buy these gummies that I saw advertised to me on Facebook.
Yeah.
I think what we could do though is talk about why I think the path of what we try to do, bundling holistic athletic development with skill development with baseball player development, is just inherently getting you more leverage. And that to me is like the platform for you to just go. And I don't know if you want to start to talk about core principles, what and why, phases. You take it wherever you want to go.
And you can be
As
as
wordy
wordy
as
as
I
you'd
want.
like.
Oh, baby.
My good friend Connor
I
Stratton
love that.
has a similar affliction as I do, which is that like when you write or talk about something, we can go on for a very long time. See the 55-minute episode I recorded of myself just talking to myself like a psychopath last week.
So I can't miss a Monday.
I was gonna
That's,
say-
I'm done missing Mondays.
So, dude, there was
That's like the equivalent of the psychological effect of going to solitary confinement.
yes,
Yeah.
sure. And I was like, and there were so
My
many.
bad.
There was one time, the movie 300. It's the Battle of Thermopylae, right?
Yep.
Okay. I was like, I thought I had that right. I would be infinitely more confident saying that if I had someone who not only I know knows that, but is also a trivia guy. Like, and that's got to be a thing.
And
Anyways,
just was in Greece.
and 100%. So anyone that listened last week, I did get it right. So
Here we go.
Academy high performance.
What is it?
What is it?
Great question. Lots of things we can go into. We're going to start off with like the overall principle for us is long-term athletic development, right? Same thing as the regular training floor with our skills at scale. We want to take a kid from when they first walk through the door, whether they're 8, 9, 10, or if they're 18, and try to make a plan for them to progress to the next stage of development. So like for an 8-year-old, that's going to look very different than like an 18-year-old. 8-year-old, we're looking at like making sure things are fun, learning different movement patterns, doing that kind of thing. While the 18-year-old, it's like, all right, you are like a legitimate athlete. We need to make you an elite athlete now. Like our training goals for you are to compete. The training goals for the 8-year-old is to have fun. So for long-term athletic development, that's kind of what we're doing. We're trying to make sure everything is enjoyable for everybody, but make sure that it is specific to what your training goal is.
So long-term athletic development, I think if you polled a room of like 100 parents, every single one of them is going to say, yes,
Yes.
I want that thing.
Oh yeah, everyone's going to
Of
say
course I want that,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, they're all buying these gummies to make their kids taller.
yeah.
Like,
Right. And so, when I did the solo show last episode, one of the things I was talking about is the USA Hockey long-term athletic development
Yeah.
document. Because
we got a great email from that.
Yes. And USA Baseball, again, has the same thing. USA Baseball LTAD is where the baseball one is. You're Gucci. The hockey one, anyways, USA Baseball LTAD.
find
And the funny thing is that in terms of like phases of development relative to age, the hockey one and the baseball one are near in lockstep with each other.
Yeah.
The thing I think it's interesting about the hockey one is they get a little bit more descriptive about defining physical literacy.
Yep.
And it's really interesting. So in hockey, they call it from the ages of 0 to 6, what they call is an active start.
Yeah.
zero age hockey players, right? That makes sense to me.
Hey, give him a cradle with a skate on it, dude.
100%. So they define it, blah, 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 blah. Encourages activity that incorporates fundamental movement skills in the 4 environments that lead to physical literacy. In the water, in terms of swimming. In the air, in terms of gymnastics. On the ground, athletics. And on ice and snow, sliding and skating.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about all of the warm-ups that I've seen my kid or our teams go through over the course of the last like 5.5 years or whatever, I think other than swimming, we've done every single one of those things.
Yes.
We've had kids sliding, we've had them jumping in the air, we had them engaging with the ground. And when I think about the common questions that people have about sport performance for kids, oftentimes the way that I think parents seem to pose those questions is in the form of flaw fix, right? Yes. I can identify the flaw in my child. I want you, expert or domain knowledgeable person, to provide me with the fix. And when you answer that question with a question which is, how physically literate is your child? A lot of people aren't prepared to answer that question.
Or they don't like the answer.
Or they don't like the answer,
yeah.
You know, and it's like you have a young no, he's going to be 15. We have a 15-year-old kid in the academy who is like a biological 12-year-old.
Yes.
And he was hitting on either Wednesday or Friday, and he's getting blown up by 70-mile-an-hour heaters, which is not an inappropriate competition or training environment for a child that age. And when I'm watching him, and I even got some video to kind of confirm, you can kind of see he's swinging a drop 3 BB core bat because that's what he should be swinging as a 15-year-old. But you can see that like he starts to swing, and there's something about like his ability to both stabilize and then rotate where it dumps really, really fast. And I'm watching this, and Kozak and I are coaching, right? We're talking about shifting intention. We're talking about making adjustments. You learn from the next thing. And he started to not suffer that same flaw, but then a couple swings later, it reoccurs. And it's like, well, I know at this point we've talked about intention. I know at this point we've talked about making adjustments and getting feedback, right? If you clip the top thing of the ball again, or you clipped underneath it and you fouled it, it's like, okay, we're not getting flush. We're not getting on plane. The tricky thing is that, like, I think part of the problem with that swing is a problem that's solved in HP. It's a problem solved by leaning into physical literacy specific to our sport. But that's a hard answer to give to a parent, which is just like, hey, your child is their strength is inadequate for the skill task. And it's not that you don't need both, you do, but you can't expect to solve one without leaving the other like unaddressed.
Yeah. So that specific kid also, if I know who you're talking about in my head, he also, before even worrying about the rotational aspect, he also struggled with just making a hinge.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
yep.
The thing that we worked on this last year to make it so that way he could hit better was focusing really hard on RDL for him in the weight room.
Yeah.
So he can actually perform the hinge pattern. But yeah, that's like a fantastic example of a kid who's just not strong enough. And like, it's very hard having that conversation with a kid in the weight room and being like, hey, look, you are just a weak kid, and it's not your fault because biologically you just didn't get lucky. You're a little bit younger. Your bones aren't growing as much. You're not getting as much muscle mass because like your hormones just aren't happening yet. And convincing that kid that the fix is not to go get extra hitting time, right. It's to go into the weight room and really crush it, is kind of a hard task. And then it's even harder to tell the parents, because parents like to believe that they know everything under the sun, and will not accept that their kid is not prepared or strong enough for what they're trying to go into. But like for that kid's fix this year, we're going to be spending a lot of time learning how to rotate now that we can hinge. So like we're going to be putting him through, for that specific issue, more plyometrics with like medicine ball tosses, some banded isometric turns and rotational aspects, stuff like that. But he's not like the only kid that has that.
No.
There's a
Far
lot
from
of there's a lot of kids like that.
No.
But then there's also the other kids who are on the other end of the spectrum too, who are like the biological outliers. So like that kid that we mentioned earlier that hit 100, that just turned 15. If you looked at him and then looked at the other kid and they're the same exact age, you would never expect that they're the same group. You know.
How difficult does that make?
Oh, it makes my job so much fun. Especially with over 200 kids, having to figure out like who is prepared and who is not prepared. But gonna slide into my next thing. Great way to tell if someone is prepared for that and when to expect them to be prepared for that is to peak height velocity, peak weight velocity, which is basically just when is the time that an athlete's going through the largest amount of growth in height and weight. That typically means that they're in that like peak puberty age, which would result in a larger amount of muscle mass gain. And how we measure that is every month we take a height and weight measurement, and then there's a way that you can put that in a calculation paired along with sitting height, and you can get a estimated date of when the kid's going to be finished growing, and also when they're going to be in that peak height velocity growth time. So that way I can, when I'm making that long-term athletic development plan, when they're like 8, 9, 10 years old, I can predict that 10-year-old to be like, hey, yeah, you're going to be in peak height velocity when you're 13. All right, I need to prepare you so that way when you're 13, we can start going into the weight room versus someone who's also 10, maybe their peak height velocity is not till 15. So like I can't put them on the same program for development without doing a disservice to one or the other, you know?
So when's the first part, when do you start getting the first clear signal that like physical literacy might be a thing that's an issue? And I think the answer is when we actually have kids in our dynamic warm-up.
Yes. Yep.
And it's...
Oh, you've seen some of the somersaults and cartwheels?
Oh, those kids get so pissed.
Well, and,
oh my God.
You were there. I yelled at a few of my 15-year-olds last week because they knew that they looked dumb doing cartwheels, so they just didn't try to get better at them. Yep. And they just like totally mailed in the cartwheels because it's like, I don't know how to do this. Like,
yep.
I'm just going to put my hands on the ground and lift my feet slightly and pretend that I did a cartwheel.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you have to be comfortable looking like an idiot.
Yeah.
For any amount of time before you figure out how to do a movement. Like, the first time you try to do a movement, you're gonna look like an idiot every single time.
And it's good for them to get used to that in the dynamic warm-up because they're going to do the same exact shit. Sorry about my language.
You're good.
Same exact stuff on the pitching and hitting.
It's the world's most dangerous podcast. You're allowed to say that.
I don't know, man. I've watched a couple episodes, but yeah.
Have you watched the one with the explicit rating?
That is the one I watched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when you go and you're learning how to throw a slider for the first time, like you're gonna look stupid because most of the time you're probably gonna throw a little floater that doesn't move at all, and you're gonna get absolutely smashed on.
Even if you are good at spinning a baseball, the first time you try out a new grip, it's gonna look
weird.
Terrible.
Same thing if like you're on the field and we're trying to teach you how to like do a drop step for a fly ball. Yeah, if you're a 10-year-old and you're trying to do that for the first time, you're gonna look like a dancing bear in a circus where you're just gonna like fall over yourself. But like you have to be prepared to do that, and like it's a great way to start practices by learning how to do that. But to answer your question, like checking and see literacy, usually during tryouts, I try to see the most where I put the kids through different gymnastic movements. So like we'll do somersaults, cartwheels, handstands. We'll do some kind of like rhythmic skipping to see if they know how to actually keep a rhythm to their body. I like to make fun of the older kids, saying that they can't dance, but and then like with the warm up with the regular training floor, we try to change it up every day so the kids cannot predict what they're gonna do, and they can actually start learning new movement patterns. A lot of kids are kind of out on that because they don't like being challenged.
Right. They don't like getting out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Well, and especially in a challenge that I think is a little bit, it's a little bit more difficult to define the benefit of, right? Like if, with those 15s, right? If they have to see 80-mile-an-hour heaters, that's going to be like a decently challenging environment for them, right? But they understand it because they draw a direct correlation between, what's the objective and the difficulty of competition. Somersaults.
How does that match to a game?
Right. And this is the tricky thing about like understanding the importance of physical literacy, right? Because when we have kids that either come in for a tryout or kids in our academy that kind of go through that warm up and they struggle with what I would just as a layman,
Yeah.
I would just describe as like they struggle to move athletically.
Yeah.
Pretty big yikes.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a pretty big yikes. And I think it's hard to understand what that looks like if you don't kind of have your kid doing those type of movements when measured against somebody else, right? Like when you see somebody that can kind of get, when we were doing like the handstand things up against the wall,
Yeah.
right?
And we're doing like, some of them are able to do somersaults out of them, and other ones can't even get their hands all the way to the wall.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's kind of hard for some of those kids to be like, why am I doing this? Especially if they're really bad. Like they don't want to keep doing it.
And you can see it in the body language.
Yeah, I've gotten lots of questions from kids like, why am I learning how to do a somersault? When is that going to apply to my game? And it's like, actually, fun fact. So like if you are, an outfielder, you lay out for a ball. Sometimes you're going to roll. And if you don't know how to roll right, you could pop your shoulder out.
Yeah.
Or like you might not be able to get up fast enough to throw that ball home on that guy trying to get to the plate. Like if you can learn how to be a better mover and more efficient mover, you're going to be a better athlete. And then you're going to go. That is the part that's going to play on the field.
It's crazy talk. And
same-
the
same-
thing,
yeah, sorry.
the thing to me is that I honestly feel like there's some people that think in baseball that like movement literacy isn't as important as it is in other sports because the sport isn't as kinetic as something like football and basketball.
There's more standing around during baseball.
And it's like, yeah, that's true,
Yeah.
But then in the same breath, they're going to talk about the movement, literacy, and mechanics,
correct.
and how the mechanics have to be perfect. And like, what do you think?
Correct. And this is I think the reason that we wanted to talk about this stuff today is help people understand that just like athletic literacy is not only holistically beneficial to you as a human being.
Yeah.
I've got pretty good reflexes and I used to be able to move somewhat athletically.
Yeah.
My wife and I were in the bathroom the other day. She knocked something off the counter.
I didn't know where we were going.
Hey,
Wait, as long as I turned and we both looked at each
We're
other
like, we're
most
both
dangerous podcast, right, baby?
Yeah, we're getting ready for work. She knocked something off the counter, and I like it's just one of those things where it was like
cat-like reflexes. You grab it.
I caught it with my foot,
That's pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
It's the dad kicking
and it was
in
like
right
this
there.
little makeup thing that I'm like, and I'm not. There's no active thought there, right? It's just it's a reflex response coordinated with movement. When you see your kid and they struggle to like do the karaoke, right?
Yeah.
And they struggle to have any type of good rhythm and balance, or they're like they can do the karaoke, but they've got like their
They have to look at
eyes
their
are
feet.
down at their feet
Yeah.
and they can't go eyes up.
Yep.
It's like when I used to coach soccer, we would do that every time before we warmed up, and it would just be like eyes, right? And when I started coaching those kids, because I kept that same group together for like 6 years, when they were like 5 or 6, most of them were not very good at it. By the time that we got to like 10 or 11, they looked great.
Yeah.
And it's this tricky thing of like having parents and coaches understand that human beings are so adaptable to the stimulus that they're given. That's why you have to suffer through that cartwheel.
Yep.
Right? Because the more that you do that, the more that your body goes, I'm getting acclimated to what this movement requires for me to execute. I get more proficient at performing it. And now I've got like this pattern, right?
Yep.
This is a pattern that I can move in. And our sport needs that, like you can't, to your exact point, you can't move poorly in baseball, but then expect baseball skills are going to be acceptable and not to mention even just good. Why would that be true? But nobody, man, if you tried to do, I'm going to go to market on Facebook and pitching lessons. In the first 4 weeks of those pitching lessons, we are going to jump and fall and slide and stabilize and land. Yep. How many customers do you think you would have?
Not many.
No.
Right? Like, but if I said, hey, we're going to do pitching lessons and I'm just going to get a kid on the bump that I know zero about and I know zero idea what their workload is, and I'm going to talk to them about the way that they move every single rep,
Yep.
man, I'm going to fill up. I'm going to fill up, right? Driveline baseball, We could do that. Academy pitching lessons. And I'm just going to talk at you for 40 minutes.
We're not gonna do that.
But I'm saying, like, that's the tricky thing about
Yeah,
our
100%.
market is just, is that people don't understand that the sport specific skill needs holistic athletic development to get the most out of.
Yeah. And I have found some of the most rewarding times over the past couple years are when kids figure something out,
Yeah.
being able to do a cartwheel or a somersault or a handstand.
Yeah.
Like there's an individual that has been on my team for quite some time who was so excited about being able to do a handstand. One of the days I was not at practice, that I got multiple Slack messages.
Yep.
And then the next time I saw this child, immediately just tries to do a handstand when we're not doing dynamic warm or anything.
Yep.
It's like he was so excited about being able to do something that he thought he was totally incapable of doing.
Yep.
And it's not, that kid has some large goals for himself.
Yeah.
Maybe not great goals, but he knows someday he's going to be able to hit 100 miles an hour. Like, that's not in his head something that's totally impossible.
Yeah.
A cartwheel or a handstand in his head,
Was
as a larger kid, was impossible.
Yep.
Was something that was like, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. And that was more rewarding, I think, to him.
Yeah.
I think if you asked him, he would disagree with that. But I think based on the way he reacted, it was definitely more rewarding for me to watch the excitement of I did something that I never thought I'd be able to do. I weigh a decent amount, and being able to do a handstand is not something I thought I was gonna be able to do.
He was one of the kids that was the most out on the somersaults too,
Uh-huh.
because he was so bad at them.
Yep.
And he didn't want to do it. He would every day. He would spend the first 5 minutes of practice in the bathroom.
Yeah.
So that way he wouldn't have to come out and do bear crawls and somersaults.
It happens at games too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And now that kid is probably one of the kids that enjoys it the most.
Uh-huh.
And he actually does a really good cartwheel now too. Probably one of the best cartwheels
Yeah.
in the academy. It's
Yeah.
all the kids look at him how the hell do you do that? You're a huge kid compared to me.
Yep.
How are you doing this? It's
And that was one of the things we had the conversation of you gotta look.
Yeah,
I
try.
know you're gonna look like an idiot.
Yeah.
You have to know you're gonna look like an idiot,
you'll be fine.
and not care what your teammates have to say about it, because they also look like idiots when they're doing this. What's better than all of you looking like idiots together?
great life lesson also. Be okay to fail and look like a dumbass.
Get outside
'Cause,
your comfort zone.
when you ask out someone, you're probably going to be kind of vulnerable.
Yeah.
You got to be ready to fail. It's the same thing.
Yep, and it doesn't. I mean, you brought it outside of baseball. With,
Yeah,
dating,
yeah.
but the same thing applies to pitching or hitting, right? Using examples from my team, but I have a kid who throws a pretty good curveball. We did a pitch design lesson, tried to change his grip, and yeeted the first 3 to the top of the net.
Yeah.
And was just this is not going to work. It's well, you've thrown 3.
Yeah.
Let's try it. Oh, and hey, by the end of the session, it was moving pretty well.
Yeah.
And the goal was it was a little slurvy, and he has a slider and a curveball, so we were trying to make it a little bit more 12-6 so that it had some more separation from the slider.
Yeah.
And we got that.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have gotten that if we hadn't been I don't care where you throw it into this net. If you throw it at the ceiling, I don't care.
Yeah.
Had the same thing in the cages with one of my other kids who he works with his dad a lot. They have a batting cage in their backyard, and he was given a cue to try to do something a little different. And the first couple didn't feel right, and he was just I don't want to do this. It doesn't feel right. And Kozak in the cage was I don't care. The first time you try something, it should not feel right. You have to go through, and then he PRs. And now buy-ins there, you realize, and that's such an important thing to get a kid to realize that it's not just about, because I think most of the kids in our academy do think at some point they're going to be able to throw 90 and hit 100. That's not out of the realm of their possibility in their head.
Yeah.
Doing some of these movements, they look at that, they're I would never be able to do that.
Yeah.
There's just no shot I'm doing that. And it's well, that's probably easier to get to than throwing 90 or hitting 100.
Yeah.
You just have to try and be willing to fail a few times to get there.
Yeah. So when we start to thinking about this idea of physical literacy and developing that, I know the answer to this, but with kids who aren't yet in that peak height velocity phase, we talk about playing games a lot. When their time is in HP, but those games are very much centered around, again, developing and cultivating athletic literacy.
Yep.
So tell me about I'm 12 years old, right? Or my child is 12 years old, and I'm smart enough to know that I'm not going to try to buy the gummies for them. but I know that I want my kid to help them move better. How do you kind of define what's the maximum ROI to go between, like, do I have my kid get me like just working on like 3 sets of 10 push-ups, or do I have them jump and land and fall, or what's the mix?
So you want to have a mix of, so there's 4 different, like a couple different ways you can look at it. You have locomotive skills, so like actually moving. Then you have jumping skills and landing skills, so like jumping up, down, landing from different heights. Then you have rotational skills, throwing med balls, being able to twist your body. And then you have like strength skills, being like those push-ups.
Yeah.
You should be doing something from each of those 4 spots every time you do training.
Yeah.
So like for us with the games, I have a game library that has right now 47 games in it with different variations within those games, where like I have them split up by what the movement pattern we're working on, like what training stimulus we're looking at for it, and I give one of those stimuluses games each day. So each kid is gonna go through 4 games every day, and one's gonna be a locomotive game, one's gonna be a strength game, jumping game, yada yada yada. And then, like, as you get better, you make those games more difficult.
Yeah.
A fantastic example of this stuff is go to the local elementary school gym class and see what does it look like. I mean,
Do I have to?
you're probably gonna get a charge against you if you try and do that. But
Look, you're not wrong about that. I mean, I would obviously make sure it's okay before I just barge into a school and look at their gym class. That's a little tough. But
like, so like some example of those types of games, right, would be like the floor is lava would be a great game for locomotive skills. You're learning how to run as fast as you can on different objects and jumping over obstacles. A jumping game would be like doing a high jump competition over a pole, see who can jump the highest, and then you have to land on it. Your strength game could be like, hey, we're doing a push-up competition today, or we're gonna grab some kind of weighted dumbbell and do a farmer carry.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna do some kind of added weight to you. And then the last game would be let's see, what would be another game we put in with that?
I mean, is sled pushing a game?
Sled pushing is a game. If you just make it so that way they're going against each other.
Yes.
As long as it's not by themselves, it's not as fun with that.
No, by yourself kind of feels like punishment.
That's interesting. Not as fun. So fun matters here.
Fun does matter a lot because if you're not having fun, no kid wants to do push-ups. I know I personally do not want to do push-ups. However, if I can make my workout more fun, I'm gonna be wanting to do it more often.
Yeah.
So with these games, we're trying to make it as like competitive as possible while we're still keeping it fun.
And that's for a similar reason. If you want to extrapolate on this at all, that's why we don't do like physical punishment.
Yes. Physical punishment is I'm very out on it. I mean, I grew up going through, oh yeah, you sucked at the game today, you guys gonna go run poles.
Yep.
You know, like, is that making me better, or is that just making me fear failure now? So like I will not give physical punishment to kids because I don't want them to associate physical training with a bad consequence.
You don't want them to fear the weight.
Yeah. Part of long-term athletic development is post-athleticism. So like when you eventually stop playing sports, you still need to have a healthy relationship with training. So like if you make it so kids are fearful of the weight room, it's not exactly going to be great long-term. So
talk to me about poles.
Poles, baby.
Talk to me about poles. I've said my piece.
Yes.
On numerous occasions. I think we're going to have to bang this drum for probably another decade or 2.
Yes.
But Connor Stratton, expert, tell me why poles are a dumb way to get prepared to play a baseball game.
I'm going to preface this with my dad also thought poles was a fantastic way for you to prepare for sports.
I mean, everybody did.
I would
right?
also like to know, did you run cross country?
I did. That's what I was going to. So I ran cross country, was a relatively good runner. Theory behind it was like, oh, you're going to play basketball, you're going to play baseball, you need to be able to run, right? That makes sense. The problem is that when you're running long distance, you're training a different energy system than the one you're using in the sport you're actually trying to play. So like long distance running is going to train your aerobic system. You're going to learn how to move relatively slowly for a very long time. Baseball, the longest time you're moving is, if you're a slow guy, 7 seconds to second base if you're running a double. Is running a mile going to help you with that? The answer is no. It'd be much, much more beneficial for you to just do sprints and actually train the anaerobic system and the glycotic system, creatine phosphate system, to like actually prepare you to move fast. Super out on poles because of that. Because poles, you're just running long distance. You're not getting anything out of it. Kids are going to hate it. They're going to goof off and do other things. Just not good. It's not good.
And the funny thing is that like I think there's a certain generation of baseball fans who grew up with this idea that like Tom Seaver and Nolan Ryan and these guys ran a lot, and that somehow
the lactic acid out.
See where I'm going.
Wait, that doesn't work? That's
Fun fact, lactic acid naturally breaks down and creates more energy for you.
Huh. The more you know.
Yeah. Fun fact.
The more you know.
Not broken down faster by doing long distance running. Who would have thought it?
But I saw a guy on Twitter say it did. He was wrong.
I mean, I also saw a guy on Twitter saying he's going to give me $100 if I retweeted a thing. I never got the $100, so I don't know, man.
Did you retweet it?
No.
Okay, well, that's
come on. I've gotten to phishing things before, dude. Come on.
Yeah, and it's funny, like with the Nolan Ryan thing specifically, right? Because a lot of guys are very quick to suggest that everybody should be running poles because Nolan Ryan ran poles. The other thing about Nolan Ryan, spent a lot of time in the gym, under weights, under dumbbells, under barbells. Like was one of the earlier proponents of guys actually getting stronger in the weight room.
Yep.
Oh, and super weird, he actually like threw pretty hard.
And he lasted very long.
Lasted incredibly long.
Yeah, super durable, right?
Wild.
That's weird. It's funny when we like pick and choose one part of the modality of training where we're like, well, this is we're going to put up on a pedestal, but then the other part of it, non-sport specific athletic strength development, we are going to significantly under index for. And it's like every time I talk to people when I have to do facility tours nowadays, I always ask them, I'm like, have you ever Googled like the Aroldis Chapman playing cards picture? Like, we can play this game at home. You can play that. You can Google that right now. I'll in editing.
I've never Googled it, but I'm just guessing
right
you can't
here.
see the cards in his hands.
Well, you're just seeing biceps.
His
dude.
biceps are
the
bigger
size
than
of-
like both of my thighs
they're-
combined.
They're straight up basketballs, dude. They're massive.
And it's, many roads to Rome, right? There are who was the kid that played for the Royals that passed away? Jordan Ventura.
Yeah.
Through upper nines, hit hundos, rail thin.
Yeah.
Right? Like I understand that is one particular archetype in our sport is you have guys who probably would get bodied by 135 pounds on a bench. I think that there are probably way more guys on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, those are outliers.
Yep.
Right. And this is your whole thing about scouting is like you don't scout the outlier, right?
Yeah.
Like but in coaching somehow
Well, you can scout the outlier, but you don't try to recommend that everyone should do what that outlier is doing because like it works for that guy. It's not going to work for the majority.
It's the Tim Lincecum effect.
I was going to bring up Tim Lincecum too because that's another pretty good example of this. I can't remember. I think Jordan Ventura had. I think there were injury problems while he was still here.
Yeah,
I think he had like an elbow issue. But like that's you might be able to get there with that body type, but like it's really hard to stay and have like a long career with that body type.
Yeah,
and continue to throw hard.
Yeah, and and the tricky thing when you start to think about developing systems of consistent stimulus and training for kids is that the payoff for that type of thing, a resilient, athletic person who's very good in baseball, you're not going to see like immediate ROI on that. You're just not. It's so. Am I going to get more ROI buying gummies? They're going to help my kids somehow get taller, right?
Yeah.
Just because they're just going to sleep a little bit more.
Well, and like I feel like one of the things I hear from parents a lot, and I know you do, is my kid's not sweaty enough when he leaves practice.
Oh yeah.
He's not, he didn't max out to failure basically, like multiple times during practice. He's not being like pushed enough. Like he's not being challenged enough. Like he needs to
He wasn't
basically get in the car after practice and be like, I hate everything. I'm just dripping sweat. Like you need to have a towel over the seat because this kid's just going to soak through it.
Might
and like,
puke.
why couldn't why could the kid still walk when he got home?
right. Like,
Oh, yeah.
These are legitimate questions that both of us have gotten from parents. And like, if you would like to speak to why we don't do that.
Yeah. So like we're gonna start with the most obvious one for high schoolers. Like, why don't we max out all the time? Well, if you max out all the time, you're gonna put so much stress on your body. You're probably gonna develop an overuse injury. Pair with that we're training baseball at a high intent level pretty consistently. If you are spending 90% of your effort every day in the weight room, where's the rest of your training going? So like now we're going to get into an issue of like training economy. Fantastic example we've posted many times, the dollar bill setup. If you spend 30 cents every day hitting, 50 cents every day throwing, that's 80 cents. You only got 20 cents more to go in the weight room. If you go 50 cents, you're going in debt. Eventually the bank's going to come get you, or the IRS is going to come get you. Whoever you want to say is going to come get you. Your body's going to not do great. You're going to end up getting hurt. You're going to feel like shit. You're going to see your performance levels go down. So a great example of this actually from our academy 2 years ago, a 14U kid was lifting 6 days a week with his dad. On top of that, he was with us 3 days a week lifting. And then he was also doing sprints 5 days a week. The kid ended up getting hurt. And he didn't tell us about it because he didn't want to get in trouble. And then when we did our HP assessment, we saw immediately, hey, this kid's producing 600 watts of power less now than he did before. And he also weighs less than he did 6 weeks ago. But he's training all this much. And the dad's like, why is he getting worse? Well, stress recovery rest situation is a legitimate thing. You need to rest and recover to let your body get bigger, better, stronger, faster, and you're just not doing that.
I think that's really critical to like underline what you just said there, which is, again, even if we just spend our dollar's worth of training economy, even if we don't go in the negative, you still have to take some amount of rest in the way that we would classically define that, recovery, right? So you're going to rest, you're going to take some time away, you're going to have adequate nutrition, you're going to have adequate sleep. And if you do all of those things well, what you want to try to do is go into the next training session actually with your whole dollar intact. But when you go into the deficit by 30 cents or by 50 cents because you're adding stimulus on top of stimulus on top of stimulus, and you don't have the mechanism in your schedule to take that rest time that's going to get you back to your whole dollar, you're perpetually in the negative. And you're trying to do all the right things. Like you literally have the best of intentions.
And everyone also gets told all the time, there's someone out there working harder than you, right?
Yes.
Someone's out there working
Someone wants it more. Yeah.
Someone wants it more than you. There might be someone out there working more than you. Is it better?
Right. Is
Is
it smarter?
Right.
So like you can work 100% effort every single day you come in here for, the 4 or 5 days for training, and then take those 2 days off. That's not a problem. That's better than you doing more over more days, because now you're not giving yourself that time to get better. That's a very hard thing to tell kids, and also some old school parents who are, they grew up playing football. Usually that's the big one. They played football and they're used to lifting 6-7 days a week. And that if you are not super sore and you're not hating your life, that you're not getting better. And it's like, it's very hard to convince them that that's not exactly correct, because they feel that, that's what they did. And they did get bigger, stronger, faster, but it took longer and they got hurt more often.
Yeah. And if you're not sore, it might mean that you just had adequate recovery. And that's not a bad thing.
Nope.
That's not a bad thing, because you enable you to get into the next training session and you can spend your dollar. Like just spend the dollar, Like I mean, we were talking about this on Friday. Like I PR'd on bench and I PR'd on deads on back-to-back days, and it wrecked my body for like 2.5 weeks. I'm old, close to death, et cetera, but like, and this is the tricky thing, because kids are super resilient, like, and a lot of times you can put a kid in that environment where it's sprints on tops of weightlifting at home, on tops of weightlifting at facility, on top of skill specific training.
Yep.
And you can ride that for a while up
Before
until
anything
the
happens.
point that you are like full on Amtrak disaster off the tracks.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really bad. But again, if you don't take the time to do any type of assessment about pre-post
Yep.
output, the way that we do it here,
You don't know.
you don't have. I guess here's the question: if I'm a parent and I don't have access to force plates in our HP lab,
Yeah.
what's a good way to like feel confident that my kid is actually directionally going in the right place? Like what's the building blocks of trying to figure that out?
Super basic progressive overloading. So if you're looking at your weightlifting, say you're a high schooler, we should be trying to increase our weights by about 2.5 pounds to 5 pounds total every 2 weeks. If we're at a point where we are stalling out or we're going down, that could be a warning sign like, hey, I should take a look at how the kid's feeling. Also, if the kid's constantly sore and experiencing delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS, that's a very classic sign of overtraining. That's also the thing that like everyone's so used to doing when they go to the gym. Hey, yeah, dude, my leg day today was amazing. I couldn't walk home afterwards. That's a problem.
It's not great.
That's not good, guys.
Yeah.
That is the symptom of like, hey, you're doing too much.
Yeah.
So like if I was someone who's at home and like I don't have all the fancy cool stuff, like if your athlete is experiencing DOMS, if they are just not feeling good afterwards, if they're dreading going back in, if they're not seeing improvement every 2 to 3 weeks, you might want to take a look and see like what's actually going on and how they feel.
The signs are all there. Like,
Yeah,
the
they're-
signs
they're-
are all
they're
there if you ask
relative-
the right questions.
If you can actually be honest with yourself and look at what's going on, you can usually see. Just sometimes people don't want to see.
And that's not
not-
super complicated.
No.
I mean, we're literally just talking about tracking your weights.
Yep.
And again, this is I think the tricky thing that I know I'm guilty of is like those 2.5 pound weights. I don't really want to use those.
No, I want to bump
like,
up by tens.
I want to,
Yeah.
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 If I'm benching, I want to go up by 10 pounds on the side. I don't want to put on those baby weights.
Yeah.
right.
Come on.
Right.
Nobody wants those little 5-inch diameter things on the end. Like, no, I want a plate, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
It's tough though.
Yeah.
You have to put aside your ego and know what's going to get you your goal in the end. And like understanding that sometimes it doesn't look as cool and sometimes it sucks, but like long-term gain over short-term disappointment is very important.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong because you have a little bit more experience working or like listening to the kids, but like most of the time, the kids want to do it the right way. Like they don't want to work out 6-7 days a week.
No.
It's either parents
Yep.
or other sport coaches.
Yes.
Or the gym teacher.
Yeah, well,
Some situations.
gym teachers are. I love you,
And some of them are
Moszewski.
great. Some of
Yeah.
them are great.
Yeah.
Coach Lane, Coach Moszewski. You guys are great. The most of you guys aren't like that. You know, a lot of you guys are I hate to say this because I also thought about being a gym teacher at the time, but like, you guys are the teachers that a lot of people make fun of because like you're not like a real
So
teacher.
this is the School of Rock situation,
Yeah.
where like if those who can't do teach and those who can't teach teach gym.
Exactly, and like the gym class is actually extremely important to like actually know how to cultivate a healthy relationship and like know what to
Physical
do.
literacy. It's what
Yeah.
we're talking about. Yeah.
And like if you have a gym teacher that's giving you the wrong information, it could be a lot of issues for you. But like I don't blame them because a lot of them are not up to date on current training. They're used to 1950s, 1960s ideas of exercise training, and like exercise science is a relatively new field of study. So like if you are not actively in the community, you're not gonna know as much as everyone else, and you're gonna rely on that stuff that like, oh yeah, I went through this when I was a kid. I'm gonna do the same thing for you. Same thing with like our pitching and hitting. I threw a game. I threw 50 pitches on Saturday. I threw 80 pitches on Sunday. No problem. No, that's not good. You know, it's just, it's same issues.
So, gun to your head.
Oh yes, give it to me, baby.
And you've got to come up with an 8-week program that's going to work with a highly confident rate of benefit to kids that are 14 to 18.
Mm-hmm.
How many days a week do you want them lifting? And in the most basic sense, what do you want rep volume to look like? Assuming that everything is going to be either under a barbell or under a dumbbell or under a kettlebell or something like that.
Okay. So, assuming we're also doing baseball training with this.
Sure. Yes.
Yep. All right. So with baseball training, we have to take into account that we are throwing and hitting and doing all these other things. So like, we're not just becoming power lifters. So I would say probably 3, maybe 4 days a week, depending upon what type of training you're in, and make sure that the days that you are lifting are the same days as you are practicing.
Okay.
Because we need to make sure that our stress is happening on the same days. So we do have those actual off days, right?
You're maintaining the integrity of the recovery period.
Yep.
Right.
We got to make sure we have like a high intent day, low intent to rest, high intent, low recovery, rest, whatever, high intent, back and forth.
Yep.
For exercises, probably stick to full body training because we're not lifting 5-6 days a week. We're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get my biceps and tries on Monday, my back and chest on.
I feel like you're directly attacking the Dorian Yates program that I tried to do when I was like in my 30s.
I mean, like, it's great for adults, people who are not athletes. It's fantastic. But for us being athletes, we need to be a little bit more precise with what we're doing and make sure we're hitting everything. So every day we should be doing some kind of push, some kind of pull, some kind of squat, some kind of hinge, and then some kind of ab-related stability-based exercise. And then, if you want to have a couple extra accessories of, I want to do arm farm today.
Sure.
Great, do that. Oh, I want to have another exercise that works on my squat today. Great, do that. But make sure you hit at least one pull, one push, one squat, one hinge, and an ab every day.
And you're largely looking for what we would call compound movements in that, right? We're not talking about, again, like the Dorian Yates, like a classic bodybuilding workout is a lot of isolation.
Yeah.
Right. So for anybody that's not really up on this stuff, when we're talking about isolation, you're talking about like a bicep curl, right? You're isolating one specific muscle group. That's what you're trying to target.
Yeah.
And that's a very different movement than something like a squat.
Yep. Yeah. So we should be looking for those like compound movements, like you said. So that's like barbell bench press, back squat, front squat, something that involves multiple muscle groups happening at the same time. We're not looking to do like, oh, I'm doing single arm overhead press.
Sure.
That's not my press for the day. Like I need something that does more than just that for my main one. If that wants to be your accessory, that's fantastic. So like a real quick example would be like if I'm doing my A1, A2, we're going to do everything with supersets. That way you do one set with like an upper body, one set with a lower body. So we'll do A1 of like a barbell bench press. And then we'll do A2 of a front squat. That way we have a upper body movement happening. And while we're letting our upper body rest, we can do our lower body movement.
Yeah.
And we'll go to our B set. Let's say it's a barbell RDL paired with pull-ups.
Right.
Great. Again, working on a hinge, working on a pull. And then our C set, let's do a dead bug. Working on that.
Yep.
We're working on an extension, and then pair that with like we want to do arm farm today. We'll do biceps and tries.
Sure.
Have a good day. Feel good about ourselves. Get ready for the beach. Great, fantastic. And then like with that, just run everything as either like sets of 3 sets of 6, 3 sets of 5. Since we're mostly going for more of that like strength, slightly rated force development on that. And we're not really working on endurance because, again, we are a short-term athletic competition.
Right. And to be really clear, our sport is anaerobic.
Yep.
So we want to train
Anaerobic
anaerobically,
training. Yep.
which means we're not doing sets of 15 to 20.
Nope. Living in that range of like 4 to about 8. When we're in the strength time, we're looking more like 6 to 8. If we're looking for power, we're looking at like 3 to 5.
Yeah.
And then make sure you have enough rest all the time. For strength phase, you're looking at probably like 45 seconds to a minute. If you're in a power phase, we're probably looking at more like a minute to 2 minutes, depending upon what you're doing.
And if you're fat and old, it could be 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then like you have
Otherwise,
to.
I'm just going to have a coronary and die on the floor.
You gotta make sure you follow what your
I know what
body
the AD
says.
is. We're good.
Yeah. Hey,
I got you.
I gotta print that out actually today.
Oh, yeah.
An extra one.
You can laminate it.
Yeah, here we go. And like what we use instead of doing percent maxes, right? Because we don't have a lot of kids that can do a 1 rep max because either it's not safe for them or it's going to take too long technically to teach them how to do it.
Which doesn't mean that they can't, again, progressively add
Correct.
weight and strength.
Yep.
It's
You just
just that
have to know.
we're just avoiding being in this 1 rep max
Yep.
phase because it's inherently it's a little risky. You are going
It
to
is.
the extreme end of tolerance of what you're capable of doing.
Especially for kids who have a training age. So like training age being
Yep.
how long have you been doing something? Training age of like 0 to 1, especially with these 14, 15-year-olds, even some of the 18-year-olds who have never lifted before in their life.
Yeah.
I was one of them until I got to college. Like if I tell a kid that's never done a bench press before, hey, I want you to max out, they're going to have no idea what to do and they're going to struggle. So instead, what we do, we use a system called reps in reserve. It's much easier to understand. Basically, how many more reps could you do with perfect form before you fail?
Yeah.
Ends up being the same amount of percent effort, but in a much easier way for younger athletes to understand. And the beauty with that also is it allows you to feel, it allows you to see how you feel that day. So like if I had a shit day at school, my girlfriend broke up with me, I failed my test, my central nervous system is shot, I'm not feeling great, I'm not going to be able to bench 225 today. I'm probably going to be sitting at like 200, and I can feel how my body is actively working and adjust what I'm doing versus like if my coach tells me I've got to do 80% or 90% of my 1 rep max, I feel like shit, I'm going to fail. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So it adds that little bit of flexibility too.
Yeah. Okay. I feel contractually obligated to ask a question about the one exercise that gets demonized more than anything else in our sport that you just mentioned, which is barbell bench
Oh, yeah.
press.
It's going to limit the range of motion, baby. Sorry, I had to jump the gun.
I know. It's just, is there any? The thing that I can't even like devil's advocate this point. I really really can't.
Yeah.
Because when you watch guys, and basically the way that the elbow spiral starts, it starts with some amount of like scap retraction, whatever. And we have kids in our academy who are like 99th percentile out of the entire Driveline database in the amount of horizontal shoulder abduction that they can get, right? Basically like this move. And if you know that the sport-specific movement that our sport is predicated on for pitchers and position players is not limited to 90 degrees, then why on earth would we avoid getting into those positions in training? How does this make it make sense to me? I'm a logical guy.
Yeah.
So you're asking him to play devil's advocate on this?
No, I don't even know.
Hey, this
that's
is
not
gonna be
gonna
really
go
tough, guys. I was not prepared for this one.
I can't I can't even ask this question in good faith as a good faith question because it's so idiotic.
Yeah.
It's so dumb.
It's been proven wrong so long now. It's not a relatively new thing either. It's a early 2000s, 1990s. Like it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
It just again, like I said before, it's those people that grew up one way and they got experience with training one way, and they don't learn anything new.
Yep.
Well, and it's like I think about something like just push-ups.
Yep.
No one is typically going to demonize a push-up, right? Like that's something that seems just we're generally okay with, right? Kids should be able to do a push-up, right?
Yep. Should.
But like I've seen those I've seen kids who do in a push-up where like they get way past 90.
Yeah.
Why don't we have the same ire for push-ups as we do for barbell bench press?
Because it's weightlifting. Don't you know weightlifting is dangerous?
And because
I know.
I watched a guy that I grew up playing against who never did barbell bench press.
And
I watched him
replaced the bigs.
make pro baseball.
Yeah, exactly.
And removing all of the people that could have maybe gotten there
Yep.
if you would put him on a bench.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's just like, well, this one guy didn't need to do it, and he
Yeah.
made it. So like, why should anybody do it?
Yeah. I mean, and I think this ultimately gets to the point where I think that the last leap that we have to make that is like truly revolutionary in sport is long-term athletic development because we're just breaking down this the natural stratification of some kids are strong.
Yep.
And some kids are outlier strong.
Yep.
And then the rest of them are like largely not.
Correct.
And then those kids that are strong or those kids that are outlier strong progress in our sport, and the kids that are not fall by the wayside.
Yep.
It is a revolutionary concept to take that entire group of people and expose them to the same consistent stimulus, and then watch and see how the sport-specific stuff of that pairs with it. I think it's the last frontier that we have, man. And like,
We could learn a lot from track and field.
don't even get me started.
Track and field, Mr. Bondarchuk, amazing.
They don't
fantastic.
want the smoke. They don't want the Bondarchuk smoke, dude.
Bondarchuk theory. If you want a great thread on that, look up Bryce Kreider on Twitter from Driveline Baseball. He had a fantastic thread about a year ago about how we use the Bondarchuk theory for baseball specific training, and how we pair our skill side of training with our HP side of training. Highly suggest you go read that. It's pretty legit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like so much of our industry is just like we just are in the dark ages, you know, because it's not even the full Bondarchuk. It's just like basic ideas of periodization and stimulus that we can't even get on the same page about. And it wouldn't be a big deal, except it provides negative leverage to kids who are never going to know how good they could be because they never get stimulus who would actually compel them to figure out how to have an honest answer of that question. Yeah. That's a fucking problem. I mean, for me, but as evidenced by last week's 50-minute rant, me in this room by myself, I realize I'm a crazy person.
But like you, to bring back from earlier in the podcast where you said you produce sturdy humans.
Yes.
I would not call your son, I mean, I wouldn't call him unsturdy, but he's an athlete.
Yes.
Correct.
And that's not genetic.
No.
No offense.
First of all, how dare you?
That is, no offense to Michelle, offense to you. If she's listening, no offense.
There you go.
That is specifically and intentionally.
Oh, I know.
And like, if he was from a different family, lived in a different area or whatever, that's a kid that loves baseball and is probably done playing by 13.
Yep.
Correct. And it's funny because, you know, like, my son is a freshman now. High school captains practices have started. Like, and I told him, I'm like, buddy, you still have 5 months, right? You still have 5 months. He just hit a ball a little bit over 85. Every offseason, he's gained somewhere between like 5 to 7 miles an hour of exit velocity. And I'm aware, this is a conversation we literally had driving back from the gym on Friday. I was like, you need to be aware that I think going from 85 to 90 is going to be much harder than going from 80 to 85 or 75 to 85, right? It's just challenging. But the only way to get there is to do all of the things well. You have to nail the basics. And it's like, he's been on the pitch shark a lot lately. That's what he's been programmed for. And he was repping 450 on the pitch shark.
Yep.
Yes, I guess as like a 230-pound person, I would classify myself as a little sturdy-ish. I don't have that in me. I don't know that I could rep 450 on the pitch shark. It's only because he's been here for 5.5 years that is the benefit of consistent application of stimulus that addresses everything. Right? And this is very different than going to a pitching coach and have somebody just like yap in your ear for 40 minutes, and then you go to some sprint guy, and then you go play with your team. It's just like the reason that I feel so confident that what we are trying to do with Academy is inherently revolutionary is because it's all in one thing, right? And it's like the message that I sent out to the Academy families this morning, and was specifically targeted at the players, and it was a 2-minute message, so it's much more brief than what you're getting here. It's just be diligent. Like, just follow the program, because the program is going to address all the things that you need to increase physical literacy, to increase athletic capacity, to increase sport-specific capacity. You just have to just do the thing.
Be diligent and patient.
Yes.
And like, I think that's probably the hardest part.
Yeah.
And I think that is like the root of the messages we get, that it's like, why is my son not sweating through the seat of the car on the way home? Because they're not immediately seeing it.
Yeah.
And it takes months, and we had one of I don't pick favorites, but like a great family that is here. Incredible athlete. The kid's an incredible athlete at 15U. And I listened to her ask you last week why his biceps weren't bigger.
Yep.
And that is one of the better athletes that we have in our entire academy.
Yep.
And it's like, well, they're not seeing that his biceps, so they can't see what he does, what he's capable of doing, which is pretty impressive for a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And like that's the question that like, if they can't see it, they have a very hard time believing it and that it's working.
Yeah.
And
But I would bet you they see it in the HP assessment.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well,
You know, like that's the.
I have gotten videos from this family of him making diving catches in games. His mom's basically favorite thing ever is the gif of him doing the high jumps.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because she didn't know he could jump like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because he jumped his height.
Yep.
Like the bar was his height and he cleared it. And
Yeah.
like that is also one of my favorite gifs because he's got a great reaction afterwards. And like the other kid that was jumping that height was your son, who is of a similar stature to this kid.
And again, Jeremy's 100% right. I would love to tell you that like I supplied all these elite. Sorry, man.
You mean it's nurture over nature?
That's super weird.
Genetic gifts?
It's like he asked me because like he'll ask me about bench press all the time, and I'm like, buddy, it's just a matter of time.
Yep.
It's truly a matter of time.
Doing it
Like
over and over and over again over long times.
yeah, it's like I'm aware that that right now I don't think that there's any kid in the academy that can bench more than I can,
No, there's not.
but that's not going to be the case.
Correct.
It shouldn't be.
No.
It very much shouldn't be, and it's only going to be the kids that stay consistent and are diligent and patient that actually get to that place. Like that's going to be pretty cool, which I think allows us to roll into the last thing I wanted to talk about. Like I asked Stratton a couple weeks ago, tell me some kids who've had some life-changing development through here. And we talked about 3 kids. We talked about Oliver, we talked about James, we talked about Josh.
Yep.
And I think, to me, without going into the specifics of that, and I think we'll end up doing like athlete stories about probably all 3 of these kids eventually. The thing that kind of was similar in all 3 of those stories was increase in a healthy way in mass,
Yep.
increase in sport-specific performance, and increase in the squat jump.
Yep.
Success leaves clues. You know?
Who'd have thought?
Like, and I think this is one of the tricky things for us to unpack, I think, as a program, because I think sometimes I remember very distinctly when we put out like the skill gains in year 1. And unfortunately we weren't doing force plate assessments in year 1. If I had a time machine, when we invent the time machine, because obviously we'll solve that eventually, we'll go ahead and solve that problem. But we had pretty good skill development results that I am very much are possibly related to the fact that kids are coming out of COVID, had an extreme period of inactivity, and even when we retested them after like a 4 to a 6 week training cycle, that there still was just like so much low hanging fruit that of course we saw like 7 to 10 mile an hour jumps in a single year of training in thrown ball velocity.
Yep.
But if we had force plates and we had done a better job of being diligent about tracking weight, I think that's the thing we would have seen too.
Yeah.
We would have seen athletic composition change, general or like athletic sport specific production change, and then skill trailed with it, because I don't know how you get there without going through those 3 things. And and this is the tricky thing about like lessons, right? Is it like, I've had a kid that went up 8 miles an hour in 2 weeks. Okay, well, knowing everything that I know about Bondarchuk and about periodization and about like phase-based training, how long it takes to make like real sticky improvements, 8 miles an hour in 2 weeks tells me that the kid didn't even know how to throw hard at day 1.
Yeah. Couldn't swing a bat.
And you solve that 2 weeks later. Like that's...
Or you're misleading people by training in different environments or whatever. Like,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Like that's not...
Or we need to pay you $3 million a year to come work for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of those...
One of those 3's got to be true.
One of those 3 things. and I think when you start to unpack that idea that like those type of performance gains in such a small amount of time aren't real,
Yeah.
or they're indicative of bad environment.
Yep.
That's why we don't want to do lessons. Like
Yeah.
that's the hardest thing about it is that the kids want to get better.
Yeah.
Parents want an immediate result. They want to buy the gummies.
Yep.
And we know the reality is to actually increase skill and strength and athletic performance in a sticky and sustainable way, you need 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Like honestly,
Yep.
you need 6 to 8 weeks. You need a month and a half.
Yep.
And you have
At
to
minimum.
address
At minimum.
and you have to address the skill, like
Yeah.
that side of things, and also the athletic underpinnings of it.
Yep.
Yep.
It's hard, man. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about kind of any of those 3 kids, like the life-changing result. Because, and I think the other thing that I'll say that was interesting about them, to clue in anybody that isn't on Connor and I's DM chain, which means all of us,
Yeah.
Me included.
including you,
Yeah. Just get out of here,
You
dude.
gotta get on that.
is that they're 3 kids, one of whom biologically immature. Again, am I supposed to say physiologically? I know myself about this all the time.
Physiologically.
Okay. Physiologically immature. And went from being physiologically immature with immature sport-specific skill to kind of getting ahead of that curve a little bit and made a high school team.
Yep.
And that, for that athlete, was a tremendous amount of gain for him. But then the other 2 stories are like one kid who is hitting balls like 90 now. And went, it's a 6 mile an hour, like a very legit 6 mile an hour improvement in exit velocity from 86 to 90. Because again, that route from 85 to 90 or from 80 to 90 is much more difficult than
Yes.
go from 60, 70, 70, 80.
Yeah.
The other kid came into us, if I remember correctly, was like 73, 74 mile an hour throwing 13-year-old that was dinged up. And he touched 87 last
Yeah.
year.
And he was one of those kids that on that 14U team was a non-competitive kid.
Mhm.
The coach didn't really
Didn't play him a lot.
care, didn't play him much, didn't expect anything out of him. And the kid kind of took it personally
Mhm.
and went to town on all of the stuff we tell him to do. If we told him to do it, he said, "Yes, sir, let's go do it." It was great. And that's the kid that saw probably the most improvement over a single year time period.
And that's
And-
the kid that so many other kids in the
Look up
academy
to
look at and are just
Yeah.
like, what is
Yeah.
that kid?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And then there's the kids that are the few kids that are still here from that
Right, that knew
team
him. Yeah.
that knew him are like, yeah, he's probably the hardest working kid in the academy, and like is probably a very good person to look up to.
Mhm.
And like he can be a little much sometimes in his own head, but like he's very well mannered kid. He cares a lot about everything, and he tries his best to help his teammates.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of times when kids get significantly better, they go from being nobody to somebody, they kind of lose it.
Yep.
But that
Yeah.
kid,
Big
he,
head. And, yeah.
Yep.
he's still going.
Yeah. So yeah, Oliver, James, Josh, kudos to you guys. And I guess we can just end with this, man. I'm curious for you, like knowing that you've had that type of impact on those kids. What does it make you feel?
It feels that's why I'm here, dude. Come on, like I was that kid. I was shout out to Kyle. Just past my 10-year anniversary of when I first
Yeah.
came out here. I was 15.
It's like
when
Kyle Bodie.
Yeah,
That's
Kyle
a shout,
Bodie,
that is a
sorry.
shout out to Bodie. There's
Yeah.
a lot of Kyles.
So I just think, but yeah, it's been 10 years since I first came here. I was that 15-year-old that was 140 pounds. I was same height I am now, but 140 pounds. I was skinny. I ran cross country, thought it was fantastic, and I threw about 74. It was not it. Not gonna play. And I decided to do all this weird shit and do all this extra stuff, and like it worked out for me relatively. But like it makes me feel like I am accomplishing something that I wish I had gotten from the coaches I had, that like I can put these kids in a better situation than I had when I was coming through. And that makes me feel pretty good, even though I do not have the opportunity to play baseball anymore. This is a great way for me to help others get the opportunity to play.
You can always throw live.
I've thrown a live a couple times.
I know.
I've yet to give up a hit.
The kids love it when
Yeah.
you throw live. So
Yeah.
we may have to get that going a little more.
I threw a little bit the last week. I'm getting in my on-ramp phase. That way I can go through velo with them too.
Let's go.
Let's go.
I also need to lift a little bit more because I'm starting to get to the point where kids are actually getting strong enough now that I'm like, oh, crap, they might catch me.
I know.
Shit, I can't just walk up and do their max with a no warm up
Yeah.
anymore without messing up my back.
Well, I'll say this, man. I think youth baseball gets a bad rap sometimes because you have coaches and parents in the ecosystem that are very much doing the live vicariously thing. And it's not good when it comes out that way, which is typically very negative. And I have a bunch of clips about just like some of the horrible stuff that has taken place. Like it's literally 2 weeks in September.
Yeah.
Yep.
You would think that I don't have like, I don't
50
know,
clips, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things that we could have talked about today about like just incredibly stupid and horrible things that have taken place in youth baseball. But that thing of not living vicariously through another kid's achievements, but being a conduit.
Yeah.
Like being a conduit for them, gaining all this experience, gaining all this knowledge, and applying it to kids who simply just want to have the truth about what's going to work. What is my biggest ROI? What's going to help me the most, man? Like, it should make you feel really good because you're doing a really fucking excellent job. And I know I will speak for Jeremy here, and I can't imagine doing this thing without you. And I'm so flipping happy to have you. Yeah. And I know that these kids feel the same way. And like that's one thing that we didn't talk about at all. But just like feel in the weight room.
Oh yeah.
Like
you can get on some kids, you can't get on others.
Yep.
And you have to know who you are training.
Yep.
And like everyone's had that coach who doesn't know your name, doesn't know who you are.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not gonna give a shit what you tell me, dude, because like you don't even fucking know. You don't even know who I am.
I broke the seal. We're good.
Sorry. Like you don't even know who I am, dude. Why am I gonna give a shit what you say?
Yeah.
It's like you get so much more buy-in if you can just know the kid's name and like actually talk to them about like, oh yeah, dude, your girlfriend broke up with you. I'm sorry, man. Like, I don't want to know the details, but like, I'm sorry that happened to you, dude. Like, I'm here if you want to talk about it. Like, if you have that level of relationship with your athletes, it's fantastic.
Well, and again, because doing that in HP informs the skill side.
Yep.
It's like there's a player that was on Jeremy's team last year. He has kind of bounced around a lot about like a leg lift or a toe tap, and he's just like. He started as a kid who just like front foot down early and then wait, then go. And then we're surprised somehow that you don't hit the ball very hard because there's zero stretch shortening cycle whatsoever. And I've seen him over the course of these last 2 months where we shut down on the throwing side, hammering trap bar deadlifts.
Mm-hmm.
And Kozak and I are watching him hit on Friday, and you can see now that he's like got this stability.
He can actually coil around his hip.
He can coil and he can hold the hinge.
Yeah.
And he put together like one swing that I was just like, I showed it to him afterwards. And I was like, man, this is, I think, the best swing you've ever taken.
Yep.
And I need you to see like this mental model of this, but I need you to also understand that you're not just developing it in the cage, you're developing it in the weight room too. And if you don't do both, it's hard to understand logically that you're going to get the most out of it.
Yeah.
Strength is never a weakness.
No.
The words of Mark Bell, founder of Super Training Gym. What do they call the strongest gym in the West? Is that what their
Something
tagline
like
is?
that.
I
Yeah,
don't know. We might be coming. We're going to come for them, but we're not a powerlifting gym.
No.
We just want to produce a bunch of kids that throw nines.
Yes, sir.
So
and have fun and love it while doing it.
It's crazy talk. That's crazy talk. So yeah, next time I've got a litany of other just like incredibly depressing things that we could talk about.
Can't wait.
Tune
in next week.
Yeah, I was apologizing last week, and I was just like, I'm sorry, guys. I feel like this is turning into like the youth baseball bummer power hour.
It's
like
therapy sessions.
Oh man, and it's tough, but brick by brick. Thank you to you guys for listening. Broke the 60,000 mark, which is great. Audience is like 1,000 an episode, which is great. Let's turn that 1,000 into 1,500. So if you can, please do the algorithmic stuff, the like, subscribe, the review. I promise it does matter because our stuff gets outside of our little like cabal of people that are really down for this, and it gets recommended to other people. So if you can do those things, that is great. Axbat.com, code DL20.
Don't you know the YouTube algorithm works? You have to say like, subscribe, and hit the bell. If you don't say that, you don't get as many views, baby.
Oh yeah.
Actually, yeah. At least that's what I've seen in a couple.
Hit the bell.
Gotta hit the bell, baby.
Hit the bell.
PR, baby.
Yeah. Hit the bell. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. Axbat.com, code DL20.
I can probably speak for you. We both very much enjoy getting the emails or text messages, because I gave my phone number out, from you guys, whether it's just we love listening to your podcast or like questions that you have, like keep them coming. We both really enjoy getting those. And
you ever give the shout out to the man that met you in the bathroom?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah,
Sorry.
big shout out to the Paris contingent.
Yes.
Driveline International Man of Mystery, Jeremy Techteal. We will catch you guys next time with something that is, I don't know. We'll find a way to like not make it be depressing and just like unpack some of the stuff that's awful and happens in youth baseball all the time, because that's what we live for. Let's catch you guys next time.